Welcome to build week 5. I can't believe we're already on week 5. Now obviously this week everything depends on that crucial delivery arriving. It's not going to arrive today because it's the 11th of November, which is a bank holiday in France. So fingers crossed for tomorrow. We've got a few little bits and pieces we can do today, but do stay with us and let's see how we get on in week 5. This morning we're trying to get this broken windscreen out of the windscreen frame. Now, this is a part of Purdy. So she came with a broken windscreen, as you'll see if you go back to episode 1, but obviously we don't want a broken windscreen, but we've got to get it out first, and it's very messy and there's bits of glass everywhere. Just walking past the board this morning, 80 days. Well, apparently Phileas Fogg could get around the world in 80 days, so I'm sure we can build a Land Rover in 80 days. We're looking at the wiring spaghetti that was delivered last week and trying to work out how the rear chassis loom's going to go in. Now, apparently, if from the factory, it should have actually run down inside the chassis, goes in somewhere down here at the back and comes out way down there at the front. But we're not sure that actually running it inside the chassis is a good idea or how easy it's going to be to do that when everything's on it, all the connectors and so forth. So we're trying to work out with this piece of wood, which is sort of simulating where the tub is going to sit, where we can actually run this loom and connect it where it's not going to get squashed and be safe. It's a bit of a conundrum. Back underneath Priscilla, looking to see where the brake pipes run. It's a good job we've got Priscilla as a guide to try and work out what we're supposed to be doing. It's the technical process. Bending brake pipes to fit. Hello Freddie, you thought you'd be in the video this week, did you? That's very good. So this is my life at the moment. I'm trying to go out and I've got a goat roadblock. I don't even own a goat. We have a new piece of kit here this morning that's going to help us. And what is this?
It's to flare the end of the brake pipes.
Okay.
All we've got to do is work out how to use it.
Yeah, just something like that. It looks very complicated, doesn't it?
Oh, there's many options.
Okay.
So that's the shape we've got to find. So it's a matter of finding what combination of bits.
Okay, so it's sort of squidged out at the end, isn't it?
Yeah.
So this is the first of our flared brake pipe ends, which looks to be the right shape, which is good. So this is an exciting moment because we hope that we've got 2 deliveries. It's a bit cold and wet today, so we're going to take this exciting delivery down to the bottom to open. So 2 deliveries. One from Paddock and the big one from Eurospare, which is what we've been waiting for. Gosh, lots of things from Paddock. Oh look, that's that funky rubber seal that we need for the heat box. This is the panel from YRM to fix the problem that we have with the seat box. YRM wouldn't send it here, but Paddock kindly got it in for us and they've sent it out with the other things that we ordered. So that's brilliant. Great service from Paddock. Thank you. So this doesn't look like much, but it's quite exciting. So what have you got for me, Chris?
That's the ignition lock and switch.
Yeah. And what have you got to give to me?
Well, you can have the keys to your car.
There you go. Purdy's actual car keys. So that's quite exciting. So onto the big one. this hopefully should have all the stuff in that's going to help us get that axle built up, which is what we've been waiting for. Oh God knows how we get. Okay, this worries me because it says left-hand drive defender on it. What else have we got in here? So we had a little panic here because, as you can see, this book says left-hand drive defender. Well, Purdy's not going to be left-hand drive, she's going to be right-hand drive. However, this is actually a right-hand drive box, which quite frankly is a big relief.
WJP.
I haven't got a W anything on here. Okay, that's what it's like. Right, okay. Yeah, got a fuel feed. Yeah, that's brilliant. We need that.
LR 017961.
Going on our recent form with bolts, we're just checking that the bolts actually fit the steering box before it goes into place in the chassis. Not sure how well that is in, but if at all.
Right. You try doing the bolt up. I've got to probably lift it up a bit. Can you see it fit at all? Or?
Steering box is a heavy lump, so getting it in is always a little bit stressful, but it's a little bit easier like this than when there's bodywork on, which we've done on Priscilla. It feels like it's caught, so hopefully good.
Yeah, instantly. Can't do it up tight because we haven't got the lock washers yet.
So this was our panic, because it said on the box it was left-hand drive. It's definitely right-hand drive, so the label on the box was wrong. This crucial parts delivery that we've been waiting for and going on about quite a bit, I know, now allows us to get on with the front axle. So in these bags, these eurospare bearings need to go into this swivel. And by the way, nobody's yet sent me one to make a crucible out of, so just, you know, reminding you if you've got one lying around. So the bearings go into these holes on either side of the swivels.
One from that.
Yeah, one from the top, one coming up from the bottom. We obviously have to get them fitted before we put the swivels onto the axle. So while I go to the shops because we've got no food, by the magic of television, by the time I get back, hopefully that will be done. So Chris has put the bearings into this swivel, and now, well, bearings and shims, right?
Many shims and many combinations of shims.
Okay, and so we're supposed to see that it
has some resistance.
Yeah.
Of about 4 kilos.
Right.
And I've got about 3 on that gauge, which who knows.
And we have another potential bit missing, which is up here.
Yeah, it goes on top of that
And
holds that, and holds the brake pipe.
Okay.
Got the one for the other side.
You have?
Mm.
Alright, so that might have got destroyed when it came out. Okay, something else to look for. So yesterday we checked with Jonathan about this preload on the swivel, and he said that he thought that we hadn't put enough on. So Chris has changed it this morning, and it now hopefully is right. And you notice today Chris is debuting our new sweatshirts with Project Purdy on. You'll see more of those later.
Right, we're going to grease the seal up in there.
Yeah.
Put that into there, then that retainer goes onto there and bolts up.
Okay. Okay, so update on the front axle. On this side, the half shaft is now in, and the stub axle is going on, which means that we should be able to get her on her wheels fairly soon. Well, we've got the other side to do, but it's getting there. This is a big pot of grease, which Chris has just stuck his hand in to put on this seal. This bit. That looks like one swivel done. Now the front hubs have to be made up with the bearings and some more grease. You've seen that process before. It's exactly the same as the back ones, so I'm not going to bore you with that. But then again, just for those of you that like all this greasy stuff, it's just a little bit of lube for you going into this bearing. That'll be on. That's exciting.
Greasy bearing.
This is basically the same procedure as we've done on the rear axle now, isn't it?
Yep.
The difference on the front axle, you remember that we only put the drive shafts in the rear axle in the last episode. With the front drive shaft, it's, as you can see, it's already in there. Okay, we now need to look at the front calipers. So another Euro spare part. They're handed actually different right to left. This is the one we need for the right hand side, which is useful really because that's the side we're working on. Okay, that's a big lump, isn't it? Wow. It just fits in perfectly, doesn't it? As I mentioned before, when we looked at the discs, these are vented, as you can see. They've got holes in, so these are really chunky calipers that go with them. This is where the brake pads go in, and then you can just about see there's like 4 cylinders that make the brakes work.
And then there's pins go through there.
Okay, but we just don't have the pins at the moment. Okay, so we're on to the other side now, and Chris has put the bearing collar, which is this bit here, into the swivel, and is now putting that on, and then we'll repeat with putting all the bits in that you saw on the first side. It's getting quite chilly in the workshop, so we brought the Caligas heater in. So we've got some little bearings that go into this swivel housing. There's 2. One goes into that part. We've got another Euro spare part here. What's this called?
That's a swivel top pin.
Okay. And this is the thing that the shims go on, because we didn't show you this on the other side because Chris did this while I was out shopping. So this time we'll show you how this all works. So that's the second bearing that's gone into the top of the swivel housing. So this is the Euro spare part, that bearing that's just gone in. Okay, next. fits on.
Yeah, now we play musical shims.
And now, these are the shims. There's various different thicknesses of shims. They go onto that little part that we showed you a minute ago and fit into here. And what that does is give the resistance, the turning resistance for the swivel that we were talking about on the other side earlier.
2 shims, which I put there.
Yeah. And then this is really just a trial and error now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we can see here that there's really no resistance in that at all, so we need to put more shims in.
No, take more shims out.
Take shims out?
Yes.
Okay, wrong way round. There you go. See, good job I'm not doing it, isn't it? Attempt 2. Is that, how does that feel?
That feels better. Where's my gauge? Yeah, that's absolutely spot on. That was a good guess, wasn't it?
Yeah, good. So this is the other half shaft. It's probably longer than the one you put in yesterday, right? This is because of the diff again being offset. And again, that's got to fit into the splines on the diff, presumably.
Yeah, it's a...
Pig.
This is much harder because it's got much more length you're trying to do it.
Yeah. There you go, and that's just slotted in there.
A bit harder to turn there because
Yeah.
I'm dragging the diff and the other one round as well.
No, that's the second hub built up. This is the track rod. This basically holds the 2 wheels together so that when you turn the steering wheel, the 2 wheels go in the same direction, and it allows you to change, well, you can change the length of this rod with the adjuster things on the end. So when you go to have your tracking done, this is what they play with. So we've got the ball joints. It's another eurospare part, thank you very much, to go in the ends. We're going to fit that now. The track rod is now fitted, which means that the 2 wheels turn together. That's pretty cool. You may remember in one of the early episodes we showed you a second-hand fuel filter housing that we put on the chassis. Now when we came to actually inspect that, we found out that it was a bit more damaged than we thought. It seemed to have some cracks and things in. So we've gone for a new housing, which will give greater reliability and security for us. I don't have another thing I don't have to worry about. We had one of the fuel pipes missing, and this is the missing pipe. Just putting that in place, and then all of those fuel pipes I think can be clipped on then, can't they?
They can. We can work out where the clips go.
So this is where we wanted to be last week, with the wheels on the front axle, so that we now have a fully rolling chassis, the engine's in place, and we can move on to the next stage. So it's the end of day 3, week, what are we on, 5? I think we're on 5, I don't know. Obviously we've had a few hold-ups, but we're pleased that we've finally got the front wheels on. This morning we need to do a bit of chassis shuffling. Is that even a thing? Who knows? And you'll remember that we moved the chassis over a bit so that we could bring the engine in. Obviously the engine's now in the chassis, so we want to line it back up with the door, just to make life easier for access, and when we need to move it out it'll all be in place. So that's the job today. And the next job is to wheel the chassis right out, and then we're going to reattach that engine hoist that we took off the other beam the other day. So the hoist successfully in place, we now need to bring Purdy back in. Okay, I'm literally laying underneath Priscilla. She's not the same as Purdy's going to be, but what we need to do is try and work out how long the bit of brake pipe is that goes up to the brake servo and runs all the way to the back of the chassis. And although Purdy is going to be slightly different, we need to get some kind of handle on this, because we've got to put the end on the brake pipe before we can put the brake pipe in place. We've got a visitor to Project Purdy today. It's our random goat that we don't own. Hello,
Hello.
Mr. Goat.
Hello.
Hello. We would sort of really like you to come, because we can get a home for you, you know. Just looking at the wiring harness and how that all fits in. Decided not to try and put it through the chassis, so we're going to run it along the chassis. And we're just taking the strap off the fuel tank so that it could go underneath the filler neck here, and then it will be connected on the back with P-clips, and in fact all the way along with P-clips. This is the nose cone for the transfer box. We're just trying to press the bearing in. This may or may not work. What are you doing? Hello, Mr. Casper. Are you coming to visit? Having got the bearing in so far, we're now going to use this very versatile, great big socket to try and push it in up to the step. Well, it is in. Now we've just got to get a circlip in. And that is the transfer box rear output cone all done, ready to go back on. So we're still looking at fixing methods for the wiring loom and also for the brake pipe. So this is a riv nut. It kind of works a bit like a pop rivet. And Jonathan came up with this genius idea of putting these riv nuts into the chassis. Here's one we did earlier. The P-clips will now screw straight into those little riv nuts, which is quite clever. Just taking the bolts out that hold the gearbox in to do the little job that we created for ourselves last week.
Yeah, well, the engine's strapped front and back so it can't move. Theoretically. Lift that up at the back if we need to. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
we'll worry about that when
When something happens. Right, we'll take the two last two bolts off.
see that pipe, we'll just lift them up.
Yep.
definitely a green clutch.
Might as well stick it on the floor, I suppose.
Yeah.
That would be safer, wouldn't it? Well, we've got a metal clip coming, so we know we can put it back together. Release bearing okay? Or would you replace that as a matter of course?
How does that look? The output housing that we got from Jack in northern France with the Speedo drive hole in is now going back onto the transfer box in preparation for us fitting that onto the gearbox before we put that back onto the engine. So just trying to get everything done in the right order. This big heavy lump that goes onto the side of the transfer box is a harmonic damper. Similar to the thing that we lost off the rear diff in the desert on the last rally, then we don't know where that went. Just a little bit of maintenance work on the engine this morning. We need to take the fan off with a special big tool because we need to take this, I can't point to it because I got free hand. Yeah, this thing off here, which is something to do with the EGR valve. It cools the air or something, but the EGR valve, which is down here, right, so that's where the EGR valve has been blanked off. So we don't need this bit at the front, but we can't get to it, so we've got to take the fan off. Okay, we've got this massive great tool. This is another one of those strange tools that we probably only need to use once in a blue moon. Oh, that's quite easy. Wow, looked quite easy. We ain't got it off yet, obviously. That's it, that's that off. Now we can get to this and take it off because we don't need it. Just a quick word about why we blank this EGR valve off. And basically what that does is put hot exhaust gas, dirty hot exhaust gas, back into the engine, and we don't want that. Obviously another job that we'll do while this is all accessible is change the distribution belt, which is nice and easy when you've not got the fan on. Of course, when we say it's easier, that doesn't mean to say it's easy. So the thing that Chris is moving now is the tensioner. Obviously the new belt is a lot more rigid than the old one that's been used. So I might need to help him.
Yeah.
So we've got it on now. Now I'm just going to let this tension off. Let the tensioner back to put the tension on, if that makes sense. And that should be right. So incredibly, this is the end of week 5 of the build. We seem to have made the chassis look more like part of a car, obviously, than when we started. But this week we have taken some stuff off. Obviously the gearbox is now down there, but as they say, you have to break a few eggs to make an omelette, and actually it's going to make it easier to fit the transfer box onto that before we put it back in. I thought we were doing quite well, and then I spoke to Jonathan yesterday and he said, oh, you've probably only done 20-25% max of the whole build, which was a little bit deflating, to be honest. And I keep watching the countdown and we're running out of time. However, let's be positive about it. We've actually done quite a lot, and we hope that next week we can actually start putting some bodywork pieces on, so that's quite exciting. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, you know the drill by now. Please like the video, please subscribe to the channel because it really helps us and it's so much appreciated. Have a great rest of the week. We hope you enjoyed watching and we'll see you next week.